we'll call the meeting to order. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for coming. Ms. Mack, would you mind praying for us, please? Let's join us in prayer. Pray in your faith as we pray in ours.
Let us pray. Most holy and everlasting Father, thou art God and God alone. Father, we thank you for this day that we come into the hallowed halls of this city of Hartsville. And behind these sacred desks, Lord, help us to do what is right and good, what is just and fair, what is pleasing in your sight, so that the city of Hartsville can grow forward together and go forward together. Lord, we ask you to keep your divine protection and keep us all in your care. Father, we thank you for your Son, Jesus Christ, who came to redeem mankind back to you. And Father, after that celebration and the finished works on the cross, we tell you, thank you, God. We thank you for sending your Son. So as we go into this meeting, let us do what we need to do for the city of Hartsville. We ask you to keep your loving care and your tender mercies with us every day. These and all of the blessings we ask in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ, we do pray. Amen.
Amen. Please join me in the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please join me in the civility pledge. I pledge to build a stronger and more prosperous community by advocating for civil engagement, respecting others and their viewpoints, and finding solutions for the betterment of my city. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to presentations. We have a presentation by City Roads and the Pope Flynn Group. Come on up, sir. Thank you. I'm sorry to get to meet you before the meeting.
Yep. Apologize for that, but it's good to be here with y'all.
Glad to have you here with us.
All right. Y'all hear me okay?
Oh, yeah. Can you,
Great.
oh, excuse me 1 second. Can you hear us all in the mic? Yeah, I've been hearing from citizens, they're having trouble hearing us when we're speaking, so make sure you're close to your mics.
That's intentional.
Yeah, that's right.
What was that, Bob? That's intentional.
Yeah.
Rarely do folks have a hard time hearing me. In fact, I feel bad for my colleague who shares a common wall with me in our office because she knows every word I say on the telephone. But I'll try to speak up for folks in the back. So, CD Roads, I'm with Pope Flynn. We obviously do lots of legal work for the city, have done so for decades at this point in time. I haven't been here in a while, so it's nice to see Hartsville again and to see all of you. So Daniel asked me to come and touch on a few kind of really core municipal law issues that maybe you could benefit from a little refresher on. So I'm going to talk mainly about your form of government. You're a council, manager, municipality. So we'll talk about what that means. Talk about millage and taxation, and then we're going to talk a little bit about annexation. But you've got me here, and so if you have any other questions, and certainly if you have any questions about the topics that I'm going to cover, please don't hesitate to stop me. I would much rather this be a conversation than a lecture. So do not hesitate to kind of interrupt me as you see fit. So let's start with really kind of the starting point, your form of government. So under South Carolina law, through our adoption of home rule back in the 1970s, our state legislature required all municipalities to choose one of three forms of government. And your form of government really dictates the powers of really kind of the three key roles within municipal government: the mayor, the council, and then your manager or your administrator. And they all differ a little bit among the various forms of government. You have a council form of government where the council really kind of fulfills most of those roles. Council does hiring and firing. Council obviously exercises all of the legislative capacity of the city. It can hire an administrator if it chooses to, but it doesn't have to. It can also delegate the role of kind of a chief executive officer to a mayor if they want to, or even to another council member. It's a very broad form of government. Then you have the what we call kind of the strong mayor form of government, where the council still exercises all of the legislative power of the municipality, but the mayor is the chief executive officer. Now, oftentimes, the mayor will hire an administrator to administer kind of the day-to-day workings of the municipality, but ultimately, that role of chief executive officer rests with the mayor. You have what is, I believe, by far, the most common form of municipal government in South Carolina, and that's the council manager form of government. So, just kind of in general terms, the three roles, the mayor, the council, and the city manager in this case, all have, their kind of distinct responsibilities. So, under the council manager form of government, that is the one where the mayor has the fewest statutory powers. Now, that's not to say that the mayor cannot be given additional powers through the city code, and your city code does just that. Most do. And then there are also traditional powers that the mayor typically exercises under really all of the forms of government, council manager included. So the mayor would typically preside at all of the meetings. Someone has to be the presiding officer, and it stands to reason that that would be the mayor. For legislative purposes, the mayor just acts the same as any of you. The mayor is one of the members of council and votes just like the rest of you, and has one vote just like the rest of you do. And no other statutory powers, although there are some more under your code that we'll get to in a moment. Council, as is always the case, exercises the legislative powers of the city. So all of those key legislative functions, adopting a budget, approving the issuance of debt, zoning property, all of those core legislative functions are exercised by the council. And importantly, and this is something that sometimes kind of gets lost in the shuffle, council only has the power to direct the city, to really do anything in service of the city when acting as a body. And so a majority of council members vote in favor of something, and that is an official act of the city. Individually, you certainly, you care deeply about the city, and you ask questions, and you have individual goals, but individually, no one council member can direct the city in any particular way. You have to act in a formal meeting, as you are today, by majority vote. And that's really the only way that council can exercise any of its powers. And then you have the city manager. City manager, under this form of government, is the chief executive officer of the city. And unlike city administrators, who have essentially the powers that are given to them by city council, city managers are statutory officers of the state. They have statutory powers that are given to them under this particular form of government. We'll get into some of the details of that in a moment, but in general, they have the responsibility to hire and fire employees, including department heads. And they also have the key role of preparing and administering the budget and also carrying out your directives. Think of it as a chain of command. You as council sit at the top. Daniel is right below you, and so you give him orders effectively, and then he carries those orders out. But the chain of command runs up, employees and department heads, up through him to you, and then back down through that same chain. Any questions so far?
No.
Okay. So let's get into some of the more kind of detailed roles here, and I hope y'all can read that. I'm looking now and
We got it
realizing
here.
that you probably. Oh, is it on
Yeah.
in front of you? Excellent. Great. Did not know that. So, as I said, mayor serves as the presiding officer. That's not a statutory power. That is a traditional role of the mayor. And it is also a role that the mayor serves per your city code. So, mayor has some roles and responsibilities that are codified, although they are not provided by statute. Mayor acts and votes as a member of council. Per your code, the mayor has the power to call special called meetings of council and emergency meetings of council. You, as a body, also have the ability by majority of council members to call special called meetings as well. And then, per your city code, the mayor also has the ability to declare an emergency, but only following the declaration of emergency by the governor. And that's a very common power that is given to mayors. Obviously, if there's an emergency, you need somebody who can kind of marshal the troops and get folks moving in the right direction. And the mayor is that person under your code. Council has also statutory powers, and all of these really come directly out of the code. I've modified them a little bit for the sake of brevity, but these are all statutory powers of council. It's kind of one of its key legislative prerogatives is to employ a manager. So hiring the person who's going to be the chief executive officer of the city is one of the most important roles that you exercise. Council has the ability to exercise all of the other legislative powers of the city. You have the power to establish administrative departments, and also to get rid of them. But once you've established them, then the department itself falls under the city manager for management. You have the ability to inquire into the conduct of any office, department, or agency of the municipality, to make investigations of municipal affairs, but all of that is, of course, subject to the powers that are given to the city manager by statute. And so, once again, that chain of command, if you have inquiries of the police department or the fire department, those are directed through the city manager down to those department heads, who then, answer whatever questions you may have, or carry out whatever directives you may have given. And then, with the advice of the manager, you obviously have the power to appoint all committees, boards, and other kind of appointed bodies of the city. So you're thinking here, Board of Zoning Appeals, Planning Commission. I'm sure you have lots of other boards and commissions that you have to flesh out from time to time.
We have quite a few.
Yeah. And then, of course, you have the city manager. The statutory powers of the city manager are to appoint or remove any appointive officer or employee. So appointive officer in this case really is talking about department heads. And of course, under those department heads, all of the employees. City managers often will delegate some of that hiring and firing authority to department heads, which they're authorized to do under statute. One of the manager's key functions is to prepare the budget every year and submit that budget to you for approval, or for consideration, amendment, and approval. I'm sure rarely are you going to just, vote yes on whatever Daniel puts together for you. And then, of course, to administer that budget. And typically, through your budget ordinance, you are delegating some power to the city manager to move money around between line items or between departments, typically within certain parameters. The manager is responsible for ensuring that an annual audit is carried out every year, and that's also required by state law. So it's the city manager's job to make sure that happens. And then to keep you advised of the financial condition of the city in the manner that you dictate. And so I'm assuming you probably get a financial report at all of your council meetings, and it's the city manager's responsibility to make sure that all of that happens. So these are well-defined roles. These are statutory roles. This is state law that we're ultimately talking about here. And they're typically roles that all of the various individuals guard pretty zealously. And they should, because once again, we are ultimately complying with state law here. So before I go on to the next topic, taxation, any questions about kind of the roles and responsibilities of all these parties under the council manager form of government?
Okay, question,
Yes, sir.
speaking of like a city administrator, so his, duties can be sort of, limited based on what the council, outline or detail, right?
An administrator, that's correct.
Yeah,
yes.
right, versus with a city manager.
That's right.
So, does the city, administrator have anything by statute?
Um,
State statute?
Not really.
Okay.
The city administrator's roles are typically codified, and that's where you see if you change your form of government or if you
It can go away.
that's right. That's
Yeah.
right. But the council manager form of government is by far the most common across the state.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
So if the city has a city administrator, the administrator is the person that actually speaks for the council, besides the mayor. Okay, we have a city manager and a city administrator. The flow system is different.
Well, it is dictated by typically a codified set of roles and responsibilities. I would say, I mean, I think, on a day-to-day basis, whether you're an administrator or a manager, you're probably always or kind of constantly speaking on behalf of the city, which should effectively be on behalf of the council. I think in either role, you're fulfilling that responsibility because you're the person who is, sitting in a desk 5 days a week, doing the work of the city, and that's one of those key roles.
So for instance, so I worked for two strong mayors in different cities, and so it was a little different, but the administrator was hired, the ordinance set up what the powers were for that administrator, but the mayor still was in charge of, say, setting the agenda, hiring and firing department heads. They did it all at the recommendation of the city manager, he or she, but it was all strictly through that. Then, of course, the most famous strong mayors are like Charleston, and North Charleston, where they may hire an administrator, but they're really just almost like a special projects manager for them. The mayor runs the town.
Go for it.
And so it's just a little different, but under city manager, you can see the statutes kind of dictate exactly how it's laid out. You don't need an ordinance to do that.
That's right. I would say that the instances, a strong mayor city where the mayor really is coming in and it is it's a 40-hour plus a week job, those are pretty rare. City of Charleston is probably the most well-known example because of Joe Riley, and he ran the city of Charleston well for decades. There are certainly lots of other examples, and you see pushes from time to time for cities to try to change to a strong mayor. The city of Columbia made that push back. It was during Steve Benjamin's term, so it was probably 10 years ago. I think the risk is, it sounds great. You've got somebody like Steve Benjamin who was a good mayor and who was very dedicated and involved in the city. And so you kind of make that push when you have somebody in the chair at that point in time who seems like they do a really good job of it. What you have to keep in mind is they're not going to be in that chair forever. There's going to be somebody else there at some point. And so if you're constantly changing that chief executive officer every 4 years, possibly, then you're losing a lot of institutional memory, and it just, it kind of changes the course, the management of the city every election cycle, potentially. So that's, I think, why you see even strong mayor forms of government typically giving broad powers that look a lot like the powers of the city manager to an administrator, so that there is that consistency over many, many years. And the employees of the city, folks who are actually out there on the front lines kind of carrying out all of council's directives are a little bit insulated from the politics.
I don't
which-
think, I don't think we'll have a strong mayor, not while I'm mayor.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you.
So let's flip over now to property taxes. So understand there's a few folks who are kind of new to council, and this may be maybe more than a little bit of a primer. So property taxes in South Carolina are a function. We all pay property taxes. We all probably know what we pay in property taxes on our houses and our cars and maybe our boats and other stuff. The way that number is determined is a function of several different factors. And kind of the overarching principle for property taxation in South Carolina is that property taxes should be uniform across all classes of property. So that means several things. The first function is the market value of whatever it is that's being taxed. It's an ad valorem tax, which means you're taxed based on the value. That's what property taxes are. So that across each kind of class of property, we determine the market value in a uniform way. So for cars, for instance, the Department of Revenue publishes a manual every year. It's a pretty thick one, and it establishes the value of every car you can possibly imagine. And there are set factors for adjusting that value for high mileage vehicles, for instance. And so not every car has the same value, but they are all valued on a uniform basis. They're all valued using the same metric, essentially. Same thing goes for real property. You have a methodology that the tax assessor uses to determine the value of real property on a 5-year reassessment basis, and that's done in the same manner, and so we treat that as being uniform, a uniform way of establishing the market value.
Question,
Yes, ma'am.
right quick. What happens when they don't get it right?
Well, so great question. We have appeals processes. There is an appeals process for both real property market values and for everything else that you can imagine. It goes to the tax assessor, and then if you and the tax assessor can't agree, it goes to an assessment appeals committee, and that's within county government. And if can't agree there, if the property owner disagrees with their decision, then it can be appealed into the administrative law court. And that happens all the time. It's a very common thing to have occur.
Yeah, that's the administrative law judge, right?
That's right. That's exactly right.
And the person that owns the property, what is the time frame that they have to do that?
Oh, gosh, you are testing my knowledge now. It is, I cannot tell you to the day, but I can tell you that it is a pretty quick turn. As with all appeals processes that involve governmental action, it's pretty quick. I want to say that it's within 30 days of the payment of the tax, but don't hold me to that. But I can get you an answer on that.
And see,
All right.
typically that's after we'd have like a kind of a blanket assessment of the whole county, and people they don't necessarily come and appraise your house, every single house in the county, so you can.
That's exactly right.
You can,
Yeah.
There's a methodology that
Yeah.
they use. They make adjustments. I mean, they do look at each property individually. They make adjustments based on age and condition and improvements, and those adjustments are usually where your appeals come from.
Okay.
And that's done on a 5-year rolling basis. It's called reassessment. And so typically you'll get a notice from the county that says, we've had a reassessment, your property's been reappraised, this is the new value, and if you want to appeal it, you have to do so within a set amount of time.
And we just did ours, I think, in 24 or 25. I think it was 24.
So your market value is one factor, but you're not taxed on your market value, you're taxed on your assessed value. So each class of property has an assessment ratio that you use to determine the assessed value. So for instance, on an owner-occupied home, the assessment ratio for that is 4%. So the assessed value is the market value times 4%. That's your assessed value. For commercial property, second homes, you have an assessment ratio of 6%. The highest in the state is 10.5%. Technically, that applies to manufacturing property, although there's some exemptions that the legislature has adopted that push it down to effectively 6%. But business personal property, for instance, is still assessed at 10.5% for the most part.
Quick question.
Yes, sir.
Look at the way it's phrased, business personal property.
Mm-hmm.
What about a institution or a major company? Is that different?
So it can be different. Business personal property, think about the grocery store and all of the freezers that are in the grocery store. That is a business. It's not a manufacturing establishment. And all the cold storage is personal property that is assessed at 10.5%.
Okay.
Now, manufacturing property, manufacturing personal property, like equipment in a plant, for instance, that is technically assessed at 10.5%. But because of those exemptions that I mentioned, that the legislature put in place within the last 5 years or so, they've pushed that effective assessment ratio down to 6% now.
Okay. Everybody got game, huh?
Always. So let's look at some kind of real-life examples, and I'll breeze through these because I think they're pretty self-evident. On a $100,000 home, owner-occupied, you've got a 4% assessment ratio, and so your assessed value is $4,000. The third factor that is on a uniform basis, particularly for municipalities, is the millage rate. So you adopt a millage rate as part of your budget every year, and that millage rate is applied to all of the taxable property within the jurisdiction of the city. A mill, there's some different ways to kind of express it, but the way that I think is easiest is that 1 mill generates $1 per $1,000 in assessed value for whatever the particular piece of property is. So I think you levy 139?
135.9.
135.9. So for every $1,000 of assessed value, you're generating $135. So for that, going back to that same $100,000 house, the assessed value is $4,000. So 1 mill on that particular piece of property is going to generate $4. $1 per $1,000 in assessed value. 50 mills would generate $200. So same example with an office building, a piece of commercial property, same value, same market value, $100,000. It's assessed at 6%, so the assessed value is $6,000. So in that case, 1 mill for every $1,000, so 1 mill generates $6. 50 mills would generate $300. And that's why typically municipalities and counties, 4% property is great. You want to have new blood coming into the city, but you're often kind of chasing your tail. If all you have is 4% growth, typically your cost to serve these additional residents, provide them with fire service and police service and recreation and everything else, exceeds the amount of money that you bring in the door. So what you really need to kind of keep building your coffers is 6% property. 6% you actually make some money on a new, McDonald's in a way that you really don't on a new rooftop. Any questions so far? Good questions.
The 6%. So what you just said is if we got a new McDonald's, that would be a new roof with 6%.
Any new business,
Right.
really, is what I'm talking about. Yeah.
So what about, is there any talk of changing the business personal property tax, like for a big conglomeration or a home office of a corporation, of a business?
Yeah. So I don't think so.
Mhm.
I think it was a pretty heavy lift to get the General Assembly to adopt the exemptions for manufacturing for manufacturing property generally, to get it down to 6%. And that's really because we are, as a state, competing with North Carolina, really every other state in the nation, for manufacturing plants. Our tax rates, particularly our corporate tax rates, income tax rates, are a little higher than most other states. And so the General Assembly is always trying to find ways to push down the tax rate for manufacturers because they want to bring in all those jobs. I've never heard any real proposal to change the tax rate on business personal property.
Mhm.
And I think, ultimately it's probably a very small percentage of the amount of tax revenue that the city takes in every year. I think that's kind of the case all across the state. I couldn't even begin to give you a percentage, but it's pretty low.
Maybe you can give me the fee in lieu of taxes.
That's a whole nother shooting match. Yeah.
Okay.
So FELOs kind of do the same thing that the exemption that the General Assembly just put in place did. Pushes that assessment ratio down from 10.5% to 6%. And I think that was also part of the incentive behind adopting those exemptions. General Assembly says, look, every time a new manufacturer comes into a county, they're getting a FELO deal anyway. So they're already paying 6% for 30 years. There's no reason not to just go ahead and make this kind of the status quo.
All right. We didn't. All right, proceed.
I don't make the laws. I'm just telling you what they are.
I understand.
So there are some limitations on your ability to levy millage. And there's really two types of millage that are subject to different limitations. So you have operating millage and you have debt service millage. Operating millage is that 135.9 mills. That is the taxes that you levy to fund the general operation of government. Think police, fire, recreation, all the stuff that's not fee-based. So really for you, everything that's not really your water and sewer system. Now, operating millage is subject to, or your ability to increase your operating millage, is subject to a cap. And that cap was initially implemented under Act 388, which was enacted back in the late 80s or the early 90s. It's been amended a bunch of times since then, but everybody still calls it Act 388. And it caps your ability to increase your operating millage with a couple of exceptions to the percent, kind of the combined percentage of the jurisdiction's population growth over the past year, plus the percentage of CPI for the past year. So your millage cap for the 25-26, for your 25-26 budget, you actually registered a little bit of a population decline. You lost 0.41% in population growth. Fortunately, that doesn't reduce your millage cap, so that's treated as zero for the purposes of calculating it. And CPI during 2024 was at 2.95%. So you could increase your millage in the budget that you adopted back in June of last year. You could increase the millage that you levied in the prior year by 2.95% and no more. You were capped. Now, there is a concept under Act 388 called look-back millage. The General Assembly realized that if you just completely lost your ability to, you lost those potential increases every year, then that would incentivize municipalities and counties to make use of it. If you don't use it, you lose it. They didn't want that to be the case. They wanted you to be able to make kind of a true assessment every year as to whether or not you needed a millage increase while maintaining some degree of flexibility. And that's what look-back millage does.
So we could go from 136 to 140. Am I doing my math right?
I think that's right.
3% increase
Mhm.
would be.
That's
4
right.
points.
That's pretty close. With look-back millage, you can also make, in addition to the increase that you're entitled to or that you can make use of in the present year, you can also make use of any increase that you could have taken advantage of in the prior 3 years. And those percentages compound. So it's not just a matter of taking the millage caps for those 4 years and adding them together. You start with the first year, you increase it to the maximum millage you could have levied, then you take that millage, increase it by the percentage for the second year, so on and so forth, to end up with your maximum millage utilizing look-back millage. You don't have to use all of it. You can use a portion of it if you choose to, but it does give you some flexibility so that if you haven't increased taxes over the past 2 or 3 years and you find that you need to for various reasons, you can make use of allowable increases that you didn't use in prior years. So as I said, the second type of millage is debt service millage. So debt service millage can only be levied to pay the annual debt service on general obligation bonds. So you can't use debt service millage to repay water and sewer revenue bonds. Those are secured solely by the revenues of your water and sewer system. GO bonds are secured by the full faith credit and taxing power of the jurisdiction. And so what you are telling the bondholders when you issue GO bonds is that we will levy whatever millage we need to without limit, and that without limit language is used in our Constitution, without limit to generate enough money to pay the annual debt service on those bonds. So the example I always like to use, if you had GO bonds outstanding and your annual debt service on it was $1 million, and in order to, when you issued those bonds, based on the value of all the taxable property within the jurisdiction, you had to levy 10 mills to generate $1 million to repay that annual debt service. And catastrophically, a tornado comes through town and wipes out half the town. Half of your assessed value gone in one fell swoop. So now you have to levy twice as many mills in order to generate that same $1 million. And you're telling your bondholders, you've promised your bondholders, that that's exactly what you'll do. Now, you do have some outstanding GO debt, but y'all don't levy debt service millage. Is that right?
We do 5. We have 5 mills. Of that.
Okay, got it. So you don't have to levy debt service millage as long as you are coming up with that money from other sources. And lots and lots and lots of jurisdictions do just that. So as long as the money's there when you need it, then you don't have to put on the debt service millage, but you're telling the bondholders, if you have to, by God, you will, and you don't have any choice. So there are no, aside from just the natural limits on your ability to issue general obligation bonds without the approval of the voters, which is you can have outstanding at any one time GO bonds equal to 8% of the assessed value of all of the taxable property within the city. So that is your kind of limit on your ability to issue GO bonds. But once they are issued, there is no limit on the millage that can be levied to repay the debt service on those bonds. So just for information purposes, your assessed value of all the taxable property in the city as of June 30th, 2025, was about $36 million. So your 8% debt limit is about $2.9 million. So unless you get the approval of the voters at a referendum, you cannot have outstanding at any one time more than about $2.9 million in GO debt. As of your last audit, you had outstanding about $1.3 million in GO debt, which left you an available debt limit of a little under $1.6 million. All right, before we go to...
One quick
Yes, ma'am.
question. Daniel, did we have that happen in 2014?
The GO debt that we took out, the debt we're talking about here, the 1.3 million.
Yeah.
No, that about $1 million of that was to purchase back the canal property that we were able to use GO debt for. So we have a repayment on that for 14 years, I believe. And I don't know what the other smaller portion of it is. about $200,000 or so, but it's, no, that wasn't the 2014 monies.
We had, I think it might have been the water park.
We took $10 million out for
Yeah,
the
that
water
was, that
park,
was
but
different. That was a water and sewer revenue bump.
and that was tied to the water, sewer, and now Neptune Island
That's right.
fund. So it's no
Yeah.
longer a separate fund; it's one fund now, and that was tied to that. And that's a $800,000 payment we make every year. And just for fun things, because I see the assessed value is at 36 million. So divided by 1,000, that's about our mill, right?
Mhm.
So
That's right.
$36,000 is our mill. So it's for your $1 million example, we'd have to raise mills 28 mills to pay off $1 million.
Mm.
28.
And the value of a mill varies wildly
Oh yes.
across jurisdictions. Hilton Head Island, their value of a mill for them generates about $900,000. There are some small towns out there where a mill generates a few $100s. So it is an enormous variation. And you'll come across some surprises, some little fire districts on Johns Island that have enormous values of a mill that is just kind of really unexpected.
Thank you.
So y'all's is pretty good actually for a municipality of your size. And it's not a perfect math like that
No.
because you've got in that the assessed value for debt purposes includes fee in lieu of tax. It includes what's it called? Business inventory. It includes a lot of stuff that is subject to all kinds of really complicated state taxation issues. And so it's a little more complicated. You can't just say one mill generates $36,000 for us. It may ultimately generate roughly $36,000 for you, but that money is coming from
Multiple
not
sources.
just from people paying property taxes. You're getting reimbursed from the state, from lots of various sources, some of which are guaranteed, some of which are not. So it becomes really complicated math really, really quickly when you start trying to figure out where all that stuff comes from, which is why you have good, smart people managing your budget for you. All right, before we flip over to our last topic, annexation, any other questions about property taxes and how that works?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
The property taxes, you said, could be changed in light of the age, condition, and what was the third component?
The market value.
Yes.
It's a. I don't want you to think there are only three factors
Right, I
that they take
understand.
into account. They take into account lots of factors, age and condition, but also whether if you added a bathroom, then that affects your value. If you expanded your house, obviously,
Yes.
then that affects your value. So really, there is a general methodology, but then they typically look at building permits and lots of other stuff to figure out if there are adjustments that should be made on that value each year. Reassessment's a big project. That's why they do it once every 5 years instead of every year. And then there are caps. If you have an owner-occupied home, you can only increase the value of that property, the market value for tax purposes, by 15%
15%.
from reassessment to reassessment.
Now, is that
Unless it sells. If it sells, that's an assessable transfer of interest. The market value resets.
the 15%, is that by the county,
Well, that's by state law.
by state law? Okay.
That only applies to owner-occupied homes. Doesn't apply to anything else.
Gotcha.
All right, last topic, annexation. So, annexation is, different municipalities have different strategies for annexation. Some are hyper-aggressive, and man, they are just trying to cobble together every piece of property they possibly can. New property typically means new tax revenue. Once that property is within your jurisdiction, then it goes on your tax rolls, and so and it increases the amount of property taxes that you generate every year. Now, we all know that's not the end of the story. If you annex a bunch of single-family residences that are owner-occupied, as we've already discussed, you kind of chase your tail on serving those residents and providing them with municipal services based on, or the cost to provide them with municipal services, based on the taxes that you actually generate from them. And so you often see municipalities being aggressive if they are chasing commercial development. That's where the real money is at the end of the day. There are some strategies to promote annexation that we'll get to in just a moment. There are three key types, or really just three types, period, of annexation under South Carolina law. The most common is called the 100% method, which means you have the consent of 100% of the property owners that are petitioning you to annex into the city. They can be done in a group, but usually they're done one at a time. It's one resident who, for whatever reason, wants to be in the city instead of out of the city. It's one business that wants to take advantage of your zoning ordinance versus the county's zoning ordinance. It's one developer who wants greater density that's allowed under your land use regulations than is allowed under the county's regulations. And so you have one property owner that is petitioning the city to annex in. Ultimately, it's your choice whether or not you accept the annexation. So you approve your annexations, really all of them, but certainly the 100% method by ordinance. This is it's the fastest method of annexation, and it is the most common across the state. And obviously, it's not at all controversial. Somebody wants to be in the city, you want them to be in the city, and so everybody's in agreement and everybody's happy. Now, the second method is the 75% method. So under the 75%, that 75% refers to two factors that have to be met in order for you to accept a petition for annexation. The property owners that are consenting to the annexation have to represent 75% of the freeholders that own 75% of the assessed value of the property within the area that's proposed for annexation. So if you had four property owners, if you had four properties that you were trying to annex, three of them, 75%, would need to petition the city for annexation. And those three property owners, the property that they own, would have to represent 75% of the total value of all of the property that is to be annexed. If both of those factors are not met, then you can't accept a 75% annexation petition. A public hearing is required. And because, just kind of by definition, if you have 75% of people consenting, you have 25% of people who are not consenting. And so you're bringing in, some property into the city effectively against the will of the property owners. Now, I say against the will. In some cases, that really is true. They don't want to be in the city, and you are forcing their hand. Happens all the time. It's a very common thing for municipalities across South Carolina to do, but you do it knowing that there's some folks who are not going to be happy about it. That's not always the case, though. You may have heirs property, for instance, where the property is owned by 400 people scattered, to the four winds, and it would be impossible to get all of them to consent to sign an annexation petition to annex under the 100% method. They may not even really know that they're the heir to a particular piece of property in the city of Hartsville, and they don't care one way or another. They're living their life in California. So it's not always adversarial, but it certainly can be. But it is a great tool to use, particularly if you're going after something in some particular new development. You see it used a lot in the upstate for mill redevelopments around Spartanburg. These things have enormous value. They weren't valued at anything 10 years ago. Now somebody invested $75 million into it, and it's going to generate some real property tax revenue. So that's the instances where you see it get used pretty frequently by municipalities because the juice is worth the squeeze in that scenario. And then the last method, and it's not even really worth talking about, the 25% method. So 25% of the property owners petition the city. The city then has a referendum within the annexed area, and if all of the residents of the annexed area vote in favor of it, then the property is annexed. To my knowledge, I don't know of any instance of it being used in South Carolina. It's very, very, very rare, if it's been used at all. So I mentioned some strategies to kind of promote annexation. There's some that are, yeah, a little questionable in some cases. Strip annexation is one of those, for instance, where you may not even annex an entire piece of property. You may just annex a 10-foot strip of someone's land that excludes their home or any other kind of valuable taxable property in order to get to other stuff further down the line that you want to annex. If you look, this is the little map there. Is Hartsville, as y'all probably well know. You can see there's a few little strips here and there that have been annexed over the years to pick up individual pieces of property. I don't know the story behind them. Y'all well may. But the one that is becoming very, very common and that you utilize is using your utility to promote annexation. So under the code, section 82-28, you require either an annexation petition or an annexation covenant as a condition of providing utility service, new utility service, to folks who are outside of the city. Under South Carolina law, you do have some obligation to provide utility service to properties within the city. Outside of the city, you have no obligation whatsoever. Our courts view, and our statutes view that as a contractual relationship between the city and the property that is served. And so you can condition whether or not you want to enter into that contractual relationship on whatever conditions you want. It's what gives you the ability, for instance, to impose outside of city water and sewer rates that are higher than in city water and sewer rates. If they don't want to pay it, then they can dig a well and put in a septic tank. But one of the conditions that you have imposed, that lots of other municipalities have imposed, is this annexation requirement. So if you have a new connection outside of the city, in order to utilize the city's utility services, that property owner, if they are contiguous to the city, has to submit a 100% annexation petition to go ahead and annex in. If they are not contiguous to the city, because your lines go out far beyond your actual city limits, then they have to sign what's called an annexation covenant. And it's a deed restriction, just like other deed restrictions that you're probably familiar with. We make it a deed restriction so that it doesn't just apply to the individual who initially received utility service from the city. It applies to that individual, and it applies to any subsequent owner of that same property. And the only way to keep subsequent owners in the mix, to keep them obligated, is to make it a deed restriction. So when they buy that piece of property, they're buying it subject to the deed restriction. And what that deed restriction says is that if at any point in time in the future the property becomes contiguous to the city, it's only eligible for annexation if it is contiguous to the city limits, then the then property owner will submit an annexation petition to annex in. And if they don't, then they are designating the city manager as their attorney in fact to sign an annexation petition on their behalf. And what we'll typically see happen is, you'll just kind of muddle along for a number of years and, go back and study it periodically, figure out that you've got 10, 15, 20, 50 properties that have become contiguous, that have those annexation petitions, and then bring them all in at one time, and then it kind of sits fallow for a few years, and then you do it all over again. It's been validated by the courts. It's a very common tool that gets used. And it's a great way to expand your boundaries and make sure that folks who are using your services ultimately are part of the same group that all of you are a part of.
Do we have any examples of that here? We have a few, yeah. For instance, the D. Brown's housing development he's doing, the annexation covenant. We have right now.
So if you have a development, for instance, the developer will sign the annexation covenant for the entire development. And so then as folks come in and purchase property, then they build homes, they are subject to the annexation covenant that the developer originally signed. And they're aware of that when they buy their property because it is recorded, it's in the chain of title, it has to be recorded in order for them to be subject to it. So this is not something that gets sprung on people. It is something that they are made aware of when they purchase their property.
So Daniel, I didn't hear the question, but you said that's what over in Little Haiti?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Yeah. So we have used this tool for annexation. The majority of all our annexations have been through utility exchange. Everything on 151 was all done through that. And so we do have a couple covenants that we are looking at right now that have now potentially will become contiguous if we do pull another one in. But as CD said, I mean, majority of it is a single tenant comes to annex in and then looks at us and says they want to serve the area. And we do look at it every single time we're looking at any type of new development coming in. But as CD said, I mean, I think you have to do a consideration of, is it worth the money? Because the 4% assessment value for just single family residential, we will end up losing money if we annex in a larger development without, first of all, we don't have impact fees, which is a big deal when you're trying to do, if you're talking about new construction, you really are losing money if you do something large. Now, over the course of time, I think it does kind of help because business follows households, so you have to play that waiting game. And just have to, every single time we look at it, we want to make sure we're doing a cost analysis to see if it's a return on investment for us. That's every time.
That's exactly right.
So that's like Veranda Way,
Mhm.
which is in my district,
Yes, ma'am.
and Egress Point.
Mm-hmm. Egrets Point's a perfect example. We ran water lines across that field to then annex in 36 homes. Same with Bay Road Elementary. A business, Mr. B's Frozen Foods, we ran sewer out to them to get that, and that annexed into the city as a result of it.
And you can also waive the requirement. Council can. And sometimes that makes sense. So, new industry is going to come just outside of town. They're relying on you to provide utility service. Industries typically do not want to be in cities. They're typically just in the county. And so you look at it and you say, gosh, it's going to bring 100 new jobs. Folks from Hartsville are probably going to work there. It makes sense in this case. We're getting something for our money. We're getting new jobs for our citizens. We don't necessarily need this industry to annex into the city and pay city taxes. That's going to tank the deal. So that makes sense to us to waive the requirement in that particular instance. Or, as Daniel said, it's just cost-benefit just doesn't make sense. There's no, we're going to lose money if we bring this new housing development into the city. So why would we bother?
Yeah, it is the opinion of a lot of citizens that live in the county that they do not, under any circumstances, want to personally annex into the city or want the city to approach them about annexing into the city because of the cost it is to the resident that's in the county. They don't feel like they're getting enough service. And Daniel, you can help me with this. With the fire code in the fire district, that's the 5-mile radius right outside the city.
Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am.
Now, did the tax rate change when we bought the new fire truck?
Yes, they added on debt millage for that. They
How
added
much?
on a debt service millage for that. They did.
That only county residents pay.
Only county residents. And that's something else to consider too when we're talking about annexation. When you, aside from utilities, you offer, services to the
Yes.
residents. So it's trash service, fire service, police service. We have a 5-mile radius district
Right.
that is kind of, it does work against us to a certain extent because people are already getting I think the highest tier fire service already if they're in that 5-mile radius. So we can't say, well, we'll put your fire out faster than the county can, for instance, hypothetically. But the reality is because we have that district, that is something we can't really use as an incentive to bring them in. And you're right. I mean, we have a tax portion. The county has taxes. The school district has taxes. And perceived or correctly or incorrectly, people see taxes as a horrible, horrible thing. So it's a pretty uphill climb to convince someone to pay extra money unless they're getting something out of it, hence the utility exchange.
That's right. It's a common sentiment. I would say in a lot of cases it's incorrect. When you take everything into account, trash service and lower utility rates and better police service and fire service and everything else, that oftentimes folks are really not paying more, but they always think they are. and it's definitely enough to.
And the value of your home is higher typically in the city too.
That's right.
So,
Like I said, it's not a whole lot more. So they really don't, I would say, feel it the way they would actually feel it if they did not have that service. With the fire truck and the fire district, that's the perfect example. If we didn't have that, then, everybody's house may and be gone.
You're exactly right. Well, guys, that's all I've got. I've kind of covered my key topics here, but I'm happy to answer any other questions that y'all might have.
No, your PowerPoint going to be available.
we have a copy to hand you.
Got it.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yep, thank you again, Mr. Rhodes.
You're welcome. Good to see y'all.
Very informative. Thank you, Mr. Rhodes.
Thank you.
How's Lawrence doing?
It's good. I saw him last night. We're unexpectedly in the same council meeting in Walterboro. Yeah, he's doing well.
Were you representing two different parties?
What's that?
Representing competing parties?
Fortunately not.
Yeah.
We're both here in the city, but neither of us knew the other was going to be there, which is always interesting. Thank y'all. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, CD.
Okay, Mr. Moore.
All right. Move on. We actually just have two. We're good, CD. Thanks, man.
Thank you.
I told him 2.5 hours for presentation, so we kept it under an hour. I appreciate that. Thanks so much. All right, just two quick, really, updates for you guys, and we can talk about. Andrew, did you already hand out the RFP for them? Because this first one's quick. Just Woodmen of the World, they put up flags, and they pay for. We put up the pole, they purchase the flag and push it up. And so they had done one for Marion and Greenlawn at the same time, but we did the presentation for Marion already. We want to do a flag presentation for Greenlawn. So we have that scheduled for April 16th at 10 a.m. The flag is already up at Greenlawn. If you haven't seen it already, it looks really nice. And I think it just kind of puts a nice little, cherry on top of the improvements we made out there already. So take a minute if you haven't looked at it, but that's what we want to do is the Greenlawn presentation. Any questions for that? Yes, ma'am.
Daniel, one question I wanted to, while we're talking about the cemetery,
Yes, ma'am.
would you look into the headstone and footstone? The family put a footstone there. There are other footstones out there, and we need to make a clear path forward that if footstones are allowed, that they're not, just covered up by dirt
Sure.
and not paid any attention to.
So we are looking, for instance, for Greenlawn, and we're looking at expanding out the plots right now. As we had that presentation by the young lady, and so we are doing that right now for the next upcoming budget. We want to plan that out. We do have certain sections that are headstone and footstone only, depending on what it
Right.
are. We don't maintain the headstones though, so if it does grow over, there's a possibility they could be lost unless they're maintained. And so if everyone alerts us to it, we certainly will look out there and take care of it to get
Yeah,
the grass off.
it's not, what happened was, with the grave, I think, kind of sinking,
Sure. Yeah.
it was covered over with dirt, and the footstone was covered.
Well, if we're made aware of any footstones, we'll take care of it so the family can know what's going on. Of course, absolutely.
That might need to turn into a different conversation. 'Cause
Sure.
It's more than the footstone.
Understood.
That's a maintenance issue that we need to address, I guess.
Major one. Like,
Well,
there's a headstone
Mm-hmm.
8 inches, 9 inches in the ground
Mm-hmm.
that's been there for 3-4 years.
Well, as I said, I don't believe we maintain the headstones,
We
but we can talk about it.
yeah, we'll deal with that.
And
Yeah.
and we do have the contract is up for renewal. That's coming up this year. So
Yeah, that's why when you said green line, I wanted to make sure that was in there.
of course, yeah.
And
Anytime.
also, maybe establishing a committee. I've been approached about that as well.
Okay. Well, the contract, we do a contractual service for all of our burials out there. council approves that contract. So any type of changes and talking about that, we need to do it. We did put it out for bid. We did receive one bid again, as we do every single time. So, but we can certainly talk about.
Yeah,
it when we do the
that's another
contractual.
subject.
Yes, sir.
We'll bring that up another time. That's very important. But,
It's clean line.
regarding the flag at the memorial, the Veterans Memorial, War Memorial,
Yes.
is it possible for us to get a taller pole there to get over the treetops?
Over the treetops? I have
Yes.
to look into that.
Or to reduce the tree height?
Well, that's
or-
something we have been doing. We did clear quite a bit
Yeah,
of the
we cleared some
trees.
limbs out. I appreciate
We
that.
raised up the canopy to keep them from rubbing
Mhm.
on that limestone. I'd have to look to see what's allowed to do that. I have to get back to you on that.
Okay.
But definitely the idea of doing something more visible at the Veterans Memorial is part of the conversation moving forward.
Yeah.
We want to make sure that it's highlighted. And as we discovered, I think when it first was put in, we ran out of room immediately. And
Yeah, I want to
so
extend the memorial all the way down to Fifth Street. Is my goal,
that's
long-term goal.
something
But
we
that's,
certainly, I don't know if we did not include it in this budget year because the numbers are working out.
yeah,
but
we're
we
not
certainly
ready
can
for it.
talk
But
about it, yeah.
that's something I want to work on. in the-
Long-term planning for it. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions about the Woodsman's of the world? And we can't help them. I mean, they help us out every single time we've needed a flag.
Yeah.
They have been there to help us. They've been really good partners with us. We're very
Yeah.
proud to have them.
Can you get me contact information?
Sure.
I'd like to
Yep.
give them a
Yep.
note of thanks.
Absolutely.
All right.
All right, next, so I put this in the email and we talked about it a little bit before. This is a draft RFP for the Fourth and Railroad project. I'm giving it to you guys, take a look at it, take it home, take it apart. I have two versions of it. One is more of a magazine type that will be put into like either a spiral binder or it'll be put into actually printed, I'll send it out to be published as a magazine type format. And then you have the guts of the thing that kind of just gets into the language. As I mentioned, we have a Brownsfields advisory meeting this Thursday. This Thursday. What time is it going to be, Jesse? 10 a.m. But it is open to the public if you want.
Where? Here?
I believe we're doing the edition again. The edition again.
10:30?
10 o'clock.
10 o'clock.
And but we are working to get our phase two completed as soon as possible because we have the phase one already. That is going to set us back a little bit. I want to at least have an answer to put into the if applicants ask me, because right now the language is going to say we have a phase one that shows issues on the site.
Do you
Potential
have the copy from?
I haven't gotten it yet, but
Washington.
I'm working on it. I have the executive summary still,
Okay.
but I think it's a couple thousand pages.
Couple thousand pages.
Yeah, that's what they said. It's a little, no, maybe not a couple thousand, about 1,000 pages, what they told me.
It's ridiculous.
In phase ones, I mean, just for phase ones, what they do is they do it anecdotal and historical evidence to determine if they think there might be something on site. And there were uses on that site that did dictate that there were potential issues. Of course, I think they looked at the surrounding area too.
Yeah.
The executive summary identified a couple things that we already know though. The two structures that are on the site do have asbestos in them. We left them up there because we thought they could be repurposed. And then there also still is a concrete pad on there, and there was potential use of, it could be in the contaminants in the soil. So that's what we know is in there.
I might miss something. This from my EPA assessment study?
This is for an EPA assessment study.
Okay.
So a little bit of history, when FDTC was looking at the site, they had to do a phase one in order for state statute to order to accept the property. They did a phase one, determined that there were potential contaminants on site. We did have a clean phase one from 2000, I think, 17 or 18.
Okay.
But they found potential contaminants. So what that does is triggers a phase two. Within that time period, FTC has decided to move away from that project. They did not start the phase two. So that means that we are a little behind because I think there was a misunderstanding there. But we will do the phase two. We then are still going to be responsible for any remediation before we
Right.
transfer that property. So we can't sell it unless they're willing to take it on, which no one will, if there's contaminants on the site. So then we have to do a phase three, which is starting the mitigation plan. Phase four is a finalization of the plan. And then we can go to see, at that point, we can determine if we want to get grant money to get it fixed, or we can do it ourselves.
Now, you say grant money get fixed.
There's-
Is that our current?
No, our current grant is planning only. But it does open up the opportunity for us to get remediation money.
Okay, so you say this, we did a study in 2017?
We did a study when the
2017?
property was first getting started. We did a phase one environmental on it, which came back clear.
So who did the study?
I don't have the names off the top of my head, but the most recent one was hired by the state.
A
by
different
NPTC.
company
A
did.
different
the second
company did
phase
it.
one.
And that's
Hey, I know
possible. It's, it's different people looking at it, and
That's right. I want to know who's the first one. They give you a clean bill of health.
the first time we did, now we
I know
don't.
that.
The second one is not.
The second
That's
one does
what I know
not.
that. I'm trying to figure out why they didn't get a clean bill of health
Yeah.
the first time.
Well,
So
the second
we
one
have
could be
no
a-
recourse
incorrect
for
or
that,
the first one could be
Daniel?
incorrect.
Ma'am?
Okay,
Do
I
we
got you.
not have any recourse for the first one being incorrect?
I don't believe so. I mean,
The
it's
second
now
one
8
could be
years
incorrect
old.
also.
That's true.
And I would have required, I would have wanted an updated one anyway, to be honest, because 8 years old, a little old for that. And they're only valid, as she said, they're only valid for about a year when they're doing the construction, so we would have to get a new one anyway. It's depending on who looks at it. And when they're taking the evidence from around the surrounding area, we know there's contaminants on the site. There
On
are
the site
adjacent to
or
the site,
surrounding it?
across the surrounding it.
Yeah.
The Vista Pond is a clear example of that.
Yeah,
There
and
is,
the hotel had that same problem,
ma'am.
right?
I mean, it's an
Yeah,
arsenal.
Or it could have been
gin
hunting
over
way
there and
out.
all that stuff.
What's that?
Gin
Or
was
they
over
could have
there.
been hunting way out.
kinda what
Yeah,
I'm
Could have,
oil.
yep.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm not so sure theirs is correct. There's the second one.
Well,
because we can get a second opinion, can't we?
That was the second opinion.
No, I'm talking about,
I mean, we could
Well,
ask
it'd
them
be
to
a
do
third
another
opinion,
phase
yeah.
one.
Right.
We could ask them to do another phase one, but this document is a public document.
Yeah.
So,
because I don't have a doubt that on the left side, going down Railroad, we were aware of those, but,
Right.
sure.
yeah. But if nothing's been done, and there's a severity of contaminants as well, isn't it? And
Absolutely.
a lot of times you, bigger corporations like Tech or whatever, they expect some of that.
Sure.
Yeah, and they, I don't know, but anyway, go ahead.
Well, I mean, this is just where we are.
Yeah.
So we're dealing. with
Anything we
cars.
find we need to address. We will.
Absolutely. And we would have had to done that anyway. So. But what I want you to do is take a look through it. We have some time now. Take a look through the RFP. If you wanted, anything you want to change, language. This is kind of a standard setup of how we set up RFPs. The two things that have changed, I think, are really important. Are that for the last time we did this was with letters of intent only, not an RFP. So we're actually asking for proposal this time. But I did not include in this one a asking price for the property because this council, I think that scared a lot of people off, was because we needed the $1 million to offset our debt. Now we have kind of bought ourselves some more time with the general obligation. So that's a difference in this one. And then also, I think that I did stress it, but I'm going to actually stress it further. The potential for a phased approach or for pieces of it to go. Those two things alone might make it more manageable for a corporation to come bite off a little bit easier. So just take a look through that and let me know if you have any questions.
Is it? Can you put this in a format that it can be? We can make comments on the PDF or something. Or
I can send to the PDF. I don't mind. Yeah, I'll do that, and you can write on it and hand it back to me. If you make any, I'll do a PDF with track changes, so that way you guys can, because I don't want to make changes that you're not.
right. Yeah. Something we can make comments
Yep.
with that.
I'll put a PDF track change on it.
Yeah. Okay. That's good.
Okay.
I really want to get this going.
We want to get as quick as possible, and hopefully when the phase, if we do a second opinion or phase 2 comes out, we'll be able to remediate pretty quickly, which I think we would have been able to do anyway.
Yeah.
That's all I have.
Hey, I got a question.
Sure.
The upcoming Brownfield,
Advisory.
yeah, was it advertised on Facebook? I haven't seen
I think it's going out.
it. Yeah, I'm talking the one Thursday at the edition.
That's the advisory committee.
Oh. Oh, I got
Yeah.
it. I got you. Okay, good. I was confused. I thought the one Thursday was public.
No.
Okay.
I mean, the public is welcome, but
Okay, I think I'd come. I'll try to come.
you came to one before.
The
I did.
next- That's 10 o'clock Thursday.
10 o'clock the edition.
Any more to report?
No, sir. That's all I have.
All right. We're
Daniel,
here.
don't go anywhere. I want to talk to
I'll be here.
you.
Hearing no objections, declare the meeting adjourned.